The Bible speaks of two trees in Eden's paradise, which it calls the tree of perception of good and bad and the tree of life. For me, these trees make a lot of sense because they help me see the big picture of spirituality, love and inclusivity, and they bring Jesus and Eastern philosophy together. The traditional view of the fall of man is that Adam and Eve got separated from the tree of life after the serpent seduced Adam and Eve. I speak provocatively on purpose when I say that, in mainstream Christianity, people have to save themselves by choosing Jesus. Salvation in this doctrine instantly restores God's perception of us, which determines the ultimate reality that we are no longer actually separated from God. How God sees us then is considered to be more true than how we see ourselves. It is up to us then to align our perception of ourselves with God's perception of ourselves. A well-known Bible verse in this context is Romans 12:2, which speaks about the renewing of the mind. The doctrine of universal reconciliation, however, says, no, it is really Jesus that saves. These two doctrines of mainstream Christianity and universal reconciliation, they can seem to be in a tug of war with each other. Personally, I think that it is easier to have a healthy spiritual experience with the third option, that Jesus did not come to save us, but that Jesus came to help us get out of this field of tension of being saved or not. This is what I understand from Christian Gnosticism, that Jesus came to help us restore our lost perception of our unity with God. In this light, we could say that the fall of man was not actual separation from God, but that we lost our perception of our unity with God. God's perception of us, our true self, can be believed to be more real than our perception of ourselves. But, on the other hand, we only have our own perception. We can still feel separated from God, and those feelings are really real. These feelings need to be acknowledged, even if they are caused by a limited perception. This is why I believe angels were going up and down the ladder of Jacob. We do not only need to go higher to become more comfortable with the ultimate reality of how God sees us, it is important too that we become more comfortable with and less judgmental about our limited perceptions. As I see it, the tree of perception of good and bad can also be called the tree of duality. The tree of duality is all about clinging to what seems good and pushing away what seems bad. This tree can be explained as a field of tension between opposites. The tree of life can also be called the tree of non-duality, in which there is true relationship, inclusivity and connection. The tree of non-duality has to do with letting go of that tension both within and without. Tim Keller says that in the early church, after the ascension of Jesus, the disciples were called the followers of the third way. The Romans spoke of tertium quid. This makes sense for me also in this context. Clinging and pushing away are options 1 and 2, and letting go is the third option. So, option 1 and 2 are the same inner frequency, but in counterphase. Option 1 and 2 go against each other. They are mutually exclusive. They form a polarization together. Option 3 is a different inner frequency altogether. Joshua in the Bible also asked the angel, "Are you for us or are you against us?" And then the angel answered on a different frequency altogether. Option 3 please, if you would. I really like an insight from Ram Dass. He spoke of going through a door in the spirit realm, and when he looked over his shoulder afterwards, the door was gone. Ram Dass spoke of transcending the duality of the two sides of the door. When we grow spiritually, when we trust the universe more, our worry about being on the right side of things can become smaller. The Christianity I know, for example, is built on duality. There were said to be two spiritual sources, one from God and one from the devil. This made me afraid because I felt that some of my feelings could be coming from the dark side. This produced a field of tension, a polarization within myself. But now that I trust God more, I worry less about good and bad. My dark stuff got dark because I judged it as darkness. Now I am trying to integrate my shadow side again. It can also be said that I am seeking to transcend the duality within myself. There are many inner frequencies, as is shown in this diagram from Joe Dispenza. You can pause the video to study this interesting categorization of inner vibrations if you want. I would like to speak, however, about Joe's categorization of someone, no one, and everyone. Ultimately, we are each other, because we are one humanity, we are everyone. Jesus also did not seem to identify as a person. He identified as the I amness of everything that is. Before Abraham was, I am. Jesus is all of us. Jesus was not just a person, a somebody, or an ego. The same goes for us, of course, but Jesus really saw it. He said, "What you do to the least of these, you do unto me." Jesus was everyone. I think there could be something really deep behind the seemingly aggressive claim of mainstream Christianity that Jesus was a person and that God is a person, exclusively that, only that, a person. If Jesus were only a person, then of course it would give us more opportunities to feel that we can have a grip on God, because then we could tell ourselves that we can cling to Jesus. This portraying of God as an ego actually feels superficial and unsafe for me now. I dare say now that mainstream Christianity limits God by exclusively claiming that God is a person, a somebody, an ego. But also, with this matter, we can go in two directions. We can become more comfortable with ultimate reality, that there are no handholds in Jesus, because Jesus is not a rock for the ego to stand on. Jesus is the cornerstone in the sense of the ground of being, where being is the opposite of becoming, which means that there is nothing to cling to or push away to work towards something that is different from how it is now. Surrender is not letting go. Surrender is seeing that we never had anything to hold onto in the first place. But on the other hand, we could also conclude that Jesus did come to give handholds for the ego, because he did take on a human form. We could say that a tantric path became available in Jesus, because in the human form of Jesus, we can really allow the ego to project our human form onto God. So-called anthropomorphic projections can be really powerful. If we divide the someone category into victimized someone and empowered someone, then I think we can see the 4 levels of consciousness in this diagram already. There is so much in the levels of consciousness. It connects with so much. One thing that is always important to point out is that the arrows that are pointing to the right can really seem to idealize ultimate reality. I advocate an inclusive approach to these levels of consciousness. I think that a danger of Eastern philosophy could be that it could create judgment about lower levels of consciousness. They are only illusions we have to see through, right? I have been involved with several groups that claimed if you feel resistance towards the leaders, then you are raging in the mirror. I can see that this is ultimately true. If leadership triggers us, then ultimately their leadership is really only that, a trigger, as the deepest cause of our feelings is really within us. But this perception does not help people acknowledge their inner resistances. It can perhaps even be considered to be a form of gaslighting, as it seems an attempt to gaslight lower levels of consciousness into submission. Too much truth can traumatize people that are not ready for it. As I said before, feelings that are produced by limited perceptions are really real, and they need to be acknowledged. This is why I think the philosophical framework of phenomenology is worth mentioning. Phenomenology is also called the philosophy of experience. In this framework, our experience is the source of what has meaning in life. Jesus said, "The truth will set you free." Some people think that Jesus spoke of the highest truth, of ultimate reality, on the right side of the screen. But what I think really sets us free is not exclusively the highest truth, but all truth. I think the truth is like a volume slider that we can learn to set to the level that is good for us. We can feel into ourselves to determine what is good for us, which can be different for every situation. I am really an advocate of increasing self-knowledge to diminish self-deception. But sometimes we need to allow a measure of self-deception because sometimes we just can't handle the truth. I think Michael Beckwith is more balanced than Eckhart Tolle in this regard. I love Mr. Beckwith. But even he said something one time that feels too real for me. He said that there is no such thing as a Christian mystic or a Muslim mystic. He means that true mystics have completely transcended the labels and boxes, to which I agree that it's really true ultimately. But for me, it feels good to really milk my Christian background. I want to have a loving relationship with who I was. So, in this situation, for example, I gave the truth slider a little push downward for myself. It can be really helpful for us to learn to acknowledge that some teachings can feel too true for us. I think that being aware of the limitations of our perceptions can be a game changer though, because then it's actually that we truly allow ourselves to have a limited perception and be aware of it, instead of that we are fully caught up in the hypnotism of what we allow unconsciously. So, whichever way we go, spiritual growth is still all about expanding awareness. In the victim consciousness, we cling to what we think is good and we exclude what we think is bad. Make it go away. In the manifestor consciousness, we start to acknowledge the seeming dark within us and we take responsibility for it. We start learning that the darkness does not need to be judged away, but that it can be integrated into the whole of our being. In the channel consciousness, as we become less judgmental and more integrated, there can still be some clinging to the ideal of letting go. We can still have an exclusive approach towards inclusivity. And then, in the being consciousness, we can learn to handle whatever energy comes our way, from whatever level of consciousness. We can lovingly be with all of it. We are everything, we are everyone. We can even have an inclusive approach towards exclusivity. People, including ourselves, are allowed to be exclusive. Everything has a right to exist. Ultimate inclusion. Until now in this video, we have set the two trees before ourselves to study as objects separated from ourselves. But it is called the tree of perception of good and bad. So ultimately, these trees are not ideals we look at as we set them before ourselves to cling to and grasp at and judge and push away. Ultimately, these trees are lenses that we look through. A good question then could be, do we see these two trees through the lens of the tree on the left-hand side? Or do we see these two trees through the lens of the tree on the right-hand side? If we say that the tree of perception of good and bad is bad, and the tree of life is good, then we eat from the tree of perception of good and bad. This can also be called attachment to non-attachment, which is like clinging to the ideal of letting go of ideals. This is also what it means to have a tunnel vision, an exclusive focus on inclusivity, which can cause nasty emotional undercurrents in society, when we want to push away people that are exclusive, which makes us exclusive ourselves. But then this exclusivity is not something that is bad, but something that must be allowed to unfold sometimes as well. So, the dashed line that we place between the two trees is the tree of perception of good and bad. We create a duality between the two trees if we see it like this. The dashed line we place between the trees is exactly the sword that keeps us out of the Garden of Eden. I think that playfulness is a key word that goes with the tree of life. We can playfully bend the line in the middle so that both trees are okay. When we learn to look through the lens of the tree of life, then life becomes more playful. Non-attachment is a game, because we can go in all directions with it. We can practice letting go, but we can also practice letting go of the letting go. We can also allow ourselves to cling to ideals, and we can allow our inner resistances exactly to practice letting go. There are two directions, and both are okay, and both are important. This is why there are both ascetic paths and tantric paths in spirituality. Both are okay, and both are important and valuable and helpful. When we feel sad, for example, we can go in two directions. We can bring up the corners of our mouth and say, "The joy of the Lord is my strength." But we can also say, "I allow myself to feel sad now, and it is okay." It is a dynamic playfulness. The tree of life is a sort of a dancing tree. This makes me think of the insight of Peter Rollins that throughout history, theism and atheism have performed a dance together as they twirled around each other. Black and white love each other. They go together. So, to get to non-duality, duality has to be embraced. Duality can be very prickly, and it can hurt where we do not see yet that life is essentially playful. There can be a lot of survival mechanisms and emotions involved with keeping the straight line between black and white. The suffering that comes with limited perception needs acknowledgement. That is why I think that the tree of perception of good and bad is a cactus that needs hugs. Fear of intrusion and fear of abandonment come together in this cactus. For example, I still have a huge exclusivity cactus inside of myself. I find it super difficult to allow others to have a need for tunnel vision. I really struggle with this emotionally. I have to acknowledge that I am one-sided in my judgment of one-sidedness. I do not like that I'm still really a black and white thinker when I judge black and white thinkers. What I do then is that I label black and white thinking as black and nuanced thinking as white. I find it difficult to be enthusiastic about the spiritual journey of people that say to my face that my spiritual journey is not of God. That still hurts. Part of me wants to exclude them right back, to say that their exclusivity is not of God. This forces me to acknowledge that I still have an exclusivity cactus inside of me that needs hugging. So, with that beautiful thought, we have arrived at the end of this video. I love you guys, thanks for watching.